Welcome back to the Confessions Podcast, Season 2. This season, we embark on a profoundly important journey, one that brings to light the stories, struggles, and triumphs of Black women living with HIV. In a world where the numbers speak volumes, with thousands of new HIV infections among Black heterosexual and transgender women, it's crucial we listen, learn, and act. Black women's experiences in the HIV epidemic are not just statistics. They are tales of resilience, strength, and hope. This season is dedicated to uplifting their voices, shedding light on the disparities in healthcare, and exploring the courage it takes to live openly and authentically. Join us as we share the courageous stories of 6 women whose lives and experience offer insight, inspiration, and a call to action for all of us. Welcome to Confessions, Season 2.
My name is Ashley Cobb. I am 39 and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I was born in a rural town in North Carolina, near an hour or so outside of Raleigh, which is the state capital. So I grew up in a very religious Christian household where sex was not something that we talked about, and let alone sex something that you did only in marriage. That was my upbringing. I had a 2-parent home for the most part, and my parents met in high school. They got married, they had kids. So I didn't really get sex ed growing up. Professionally, I'm a sex educator. And one of the reasons why I wanted to become a sex educator was because I realized that as I was getting into adulthood, that a lot of us are just doing a lot of things trial and error, even as adults. If you live in the South, you don't really get sex ed. You get abstinence-based sex ed, which abstinence is cool, but we know abstinence does not work because people they're curious and they're going to have sex. So, I was doing a lot of things in college that was kind of like just trying things out, not really knowing a lot about different things. So I grew up Christian. I grew up very conservative, and I'm definitely not that now. I've been a sex educator since 2016, so almost 10 years actually. Before I was doing this, I was a teacher. I worked as a teacher in a classroom. Well, teaching was not the job I really wanted to do. It was the job I found. I went back and got a public health degree because I was very passionate about working with Black women, particularly in HIV. Also, at that time, I was near 30. And I was on a path of kind of like rediscovery of who I was, what I believed as a person. Sex and the City is now on Netflix. And I love Sex and the City. Like, I rewatch this series once a year almost from beginning to end. And growing up, I was raised to be a Charlotte. I was raised to be very conservative in my thoughts. And my dad, you date one person and you love them and you have family and all these things, right? That's how I was raised, but that's how my mother is. But then, life happens and you have experiences. And then, your views on things change. And I realized watching it's like, oh my God, I'm Samantha, right? And so sometimes as an adult, I have struggled sometimes with being who I am supposed to be and versus being who I was raised to be. But I've embraced who I am. And so part of my job is I want to help other women discover who they are. If you are truly a Charlotte, be a Charlotte. But if you are someone who wants to explore and you discover, I may be a little like Carrie, or I may be a Samantha, or I may be some of the other people, do that. And I want to help you to do that and to do that safely or safer. So that's kind of why I became a sex educator. I get a lot of questions around pleasure, how women can prioritize that, how they can vocalize what the things they're not getting from their partner, so they can have more pleasurable experience. That is usually what all my questions from women are about. How to make sex better, how I can tell my partner I want this differently. As a sex educator, I work with typically college students and high school students. So I teach it from the standpoint of one of the STIs that you can contract, right? However, working with women, I've learned the stats and since moving to Atlanta. So I moved to Atlanta in 2021. And so this new CDC released this new data. Oh, it's not new, but they made an article about it where Atlanta is number 3 in the country with new HIV infections. And most people aren't aware that the new HIV infections, women typically account for over half of those, right? A lot of times we as women, we don't see ourselves in the HIV epidemic. We're like, oh, that's a gay person's disease, or I'm not someone who is doing risky behavior, because no one wants to equate risk with what they're doing. Not really, We don't see ourselves as risky. 90% of the women that I know that acquired HIV acquired it from a man. I know some that acquired it through drug use, but of the ones I know, 90% of them acquired it from having sex with a man. Now, of the ones that I know, a lot of those also in that 90% were in relationships or ongoing sexual relations with that person, monogamish relations with that person. HIV doesn't have a face. It doesn't have, it doesn't have like a particular person. It can happen to anyone who was having sex. All you need to be is human and to have sex. So my job is to also get that message out and let people to understand that if you are having sexual intercourse, if you're fucking, then you too are HIV possible. And you too have the ability to acquire HIV. That's it. That's all you need is to be fucking and be human. That's it. I learned about PrEP, and that was for women probably in 2022. I work at a nonprofit in Georgia called West Care, and we do HIV prevention as well as some other type of prevention. Well, I work in the HIV department. And so I was at a testing event, and this lady came up to me and she was like, oh, why don't you get tested? Because, I'm on PrEP, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me more. And she was like, yeah, her doctor told her about it, and she goes and she takes the pills and all that stuff. Now, up to that point, my understanding was PrEP it was for men. I didn't know it was for women. I've heard about it, but I didn't know it was a thing that was for women. And so I went and talked to one of my other friends who works in pharma. And I was like, this woman today told me, she's on PrEP and she's all these things. She was like, oh yeah, it's for women too, and all these other things. So I was like, cool. The wonderful thing about Atlanta is, and probably other metropolitan cities is, there's a gazillion of HIV clinics that provide PrEP medication. So I went to one here and I was like, I want to know more about PrEP. And they told me about, so I got on the daily oral PrEP at that point. For me, it was important to be able to, I'm trying to talk to other Black women about all their options and all the tools in the toolbox, right? It's easier to do that if I'm actually using one of the tools in the toolbox. It's one thing to be like, oh, you should get on this medication. It's another thing to be like, oh, you should get on it, and I'm on it too, and here's why I'm on it, right? It's a little more convincing when you actually are on the thing you're trying to convince other people to be on. So that's kind of how I heard about it. And that was my decision. That was why I got on it. So I've been on PrEP a year. So it was last year. I was 38. I'm on Apretude. Apretude is the injectable PrEP. You go every other month and you get an injection in your tush. And I tell people, I kind of equate it to how if you got the COVID vaccine, they put it in your arm and your arm's kind of tender for a couple of days. And that's kind of how the shot feels to me at first. When I first got it, now that I've been getting it for these months, I don't even really feel that anymore. I guess my body's getting used to the injection. So almost makes a year that I've been on Apretude. I haven't had any issues at all. No side effects. Everything works. My hair, it's already short, so I'm not sure if it fell out or not. I didn't have hair to begin with. Women were a little vain, right? So we want to make sure we don't gain weight. I didn't gain any weight, any noticeable weight. My hair, I still have my hair. The juices still work when they need to. Like all the things that we care about. And so none of those are decided. My sex drive didn't die. And I also knew that the injectable was the only PrEP medication that was tested on Black women specifically because they did their studies and trials on women in Africa. I switched from daily oral to an injectable because, one, I hate taking pills. I am now on birth control pills, and I have an implant in my arm because I hate taking pills. Trying to keep up with the pill regimen every day is a lot. And then somebody I know was actually on the injectable, and they talk about how good it was, and then that it was actually tested on Black women in Africa. And I was like, okay, cool. This is something that I would like to try. So I went to my doctor that I'm now going to, and I told her that I was interested. She's a Black woman here in Atlanta, and she was like, great. And so they got me on it. They have a study that it's the Ebony study that I'm a part of that study. I tell most people, like, I'm on PrEP. They're like, most heterosexual Black men that I talk to here in the South have no idea what that is. I'm just like, what's that? And I explain, it's a prevention medication for HIV. They're like, oh, okay. And that's pretty much how the conversation ends. Like, they're like, cool. And that's the gist of that. Yeah, they don't particularly care. It doesn't stop anything. They think it's cool. I'm on it. And that's usually how it ends. I'm single. I'm not married. not in a relationship, so I'm single. I'm single most of the time. Meaning, my sexual partner changes who I'm dating at the time. It may be something, it just changes. Depends on the month. It just changes. Also, what I really want people to understand is that one, PrEP is for them, right? PrEP is an option. I want them to know that it's a tool that you can use. You don't have to use it, no pressure, but I want them to know that I want them to at least be aware that you have this option that's available to you and that you don't have to put your sexual health in the hands of other people. You can take control of your sexual health by doing certain things, and sometimes those certain things are PrEP is an option, Truth of the matter is everybody's not using condoms. We know that because STI rates are high, so we know people ain't using condoms. So if you're not going to use a condom anyway, you can do some other things that can prevent other things. So this is a tool that you can use. So that's what I want people to be aware of it. Now, if they try, it's up to them whether they do it or not. But at least, you're aware that you have the option. We have that and we have PrEP. Those are typically the ones that I talk about. We have DoxyPep. This is PrEP equivalent, but for the other STIs. So those are the things I kind of talk about and let people know that exist for them. I think that women should one, be as safe as possible. Because even if you're monogamous, we know people who are monogamous sometimes are human and things happen and cheating is a thing and people do things that, unless someone is, you're Siamese twins, you don't know what someone is doing when they're not in your presence, right? So it's important to always make sure that you're good and you're protected. Again, people preach condoms, but we know that people don't like condoms for various reasons. It decreases the pleasure of sex and all those things. The one thing I do tell people about using PrEP is, one, you can go skin to skin, which people tend to love anyway. It also allows you to be able to kind of like explore different things without the worry. There are studies that have been done on men because, those people have been on PrEP the longest. And they said that while on PrEP, it allowed them to kind of try different things and it increased their ability to do things that maybe, their kinks and all these things that they wanted to try before, but like, I don't know. But now, because they're on PrEP, they're like, okay, we're going to let our freak flag fly, right? So it increased all of those things, your ability to try different things, because you have at least that one layer of protection, and so you have one thing you're not particularly worried about. Now, the other 10 STIs still exist, but I think people, unfortunately, when it comes to HIV is like the boogeyman. That's the one that everybody does not want. All the rest of them, people are like, oh, I can go, get a shot or take a pill, except for like herpes. They don't really care as much. So yeah, so my thing is to tell women, just protect yourself, whatever that is. That way you're able to do all the things you want to do, have all the pleasure you want to have, but do it in a safer way. Black people in general don't talk about sex. Like, it's just very taboo. We don't have conversations around it. If we do have conversations around it, it's very kind of in secret. It's not something we do out loud. Fascinating thing about people, why people like me, is that I'm able to have this conversation with people in this everyday regular language, right? I look like you, talk like you, speak like you. I'm from the same places as you. I know I use words like pussy and fuck and all. It's like, we just have conversations, right? It's real. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about, when's the last time you orgasm? When's the last time you, all these type of conversations in language that's relatable to them. And that helps them to, one, feel comfortable, because here you are, this Black woman who looks like me, who sounds like me, who has same similar background as me, and who's able to relate to whatever your experiences are. Because like someone who grew up in the church, understand what that looks like, what that the Bible tells us, have sex, not put that sex till you're married, and all those things. So I understand what it is to feel like if I'm engaging in this activity, that means I am sinning, right? And not being able to be comfortable doing that because I don't, because my previous belief system taught me that this is wrong, right? You can't enjoy sex if you think it's wrong. You're just not going to, because you think what you're doing is not right. So, I'm able to like kind of share my own story, testimony, I guess is what you want to say. And it's kind of, they're able to relate to it. So I have not encountered anyone who was positive, or if they were positive, they didn't tell me. I didn't really have a mindset thing. It was more so, I was doing it to be a guinea pig, honest to goodness. I was like, okay, cool, this medication I heard about for women. I'm going to try it. And then I'm going to tell all the people about it that I was on it. So I went into kind of optimistic, or, I was like, okay, cool, this is going to be a new drug. I'm going to get on it. I'm going to tell all the folks about it, and they're going to get on it too. I didn't really think anything. I went got my prescription. I remember my friends, I'm going to get on PrEP. They were like, okay, on the internet, next day, y'all, I got PrEP medication. It went in it with the intention of getting on so I could tell everybody else that I'm on it. There are two types of people in the world. You have people who are HIV positive, and you have people who are HIV possible. If you are HIV positive, that means you're someone who is living with HIV. If you are HIV possible, that means you are someone who has the possibility of acquiring HIV.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through Season 2 of the Confessions podcast. The stories shared by the brave women on our platform are more than just confessions. They are a beacon of hope, a call for understanding, and a plea for change. Until next time, take care and continue to listen, learn, and advocate for women. Stay brave, beautiful, and strong.